Hello, Revere, and welcome to our Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today I have a special guest. His name is Patrick Keefe, and he's running for Ward 4 City Councilor. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thanks for having me, Morris.
And you are a community veteran because you do a lot of things, but we'll get into that later. So why don't you start off and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Patrick Keefe, and I live in Revere, and I live off of Kilburn. I live on Kilburn Street. I have 2 children, a wife and a dog. My wife's name is Jennifer Infantino Keefe, and my both children, Adriana and Patrick, both one is 12 and the other one is 9. They both attend Revere schools. One happens to go to the A.C. Wayland, and the other goes to the Susan B. Anthony School.
And I got to tell you, I try to get you many, many times. And the reason I couldn't get you because you could only make it on a Friday because you're a very busy man. And then I realized why you could make it on a Friday, because Friday is a fish day.
That's right.
And you work for Legal Seafood, so tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. Fridays are a busy day. You know, weekends can be pretty busy and hectic for me. One of the fortunate things is I can get some stuff done during the day, and a lot of times I'll go in to work at night. It happens to be pretty busy. You know, as you know, most people like to dine at night. But I've worked for Legal Seafoods for 14 years and worked my way up from a sous chef all the way to the regional chef or the culinary director for a lot of the Boston region.
So you travel all around with the stores?
Correct. We have 35 restaurants.
35?
Yep, up and down the East Coast.
From where to where?
So we go from Massachusetts, so as far north as Burlington, Mass, and then we're all the way down to Atlanta, Georgia.
Way down south?
Yeah, we tested out the Florida market years back. It's different, and you know, we obviously have to ship our seafood all the way from Boston because we feel it's the best product is coming in right in through the Gloucester and the Boston fish markets.
I was going to ask you about that, Patrick, as a layman. In other words, the fish, like down south, they would have different fish in the waters than we have up here.
Sure.
Is it just from one location the fish comes, or it comes from the south and the north?
No, of course we get product from all around the world. You know, you'll have shrimp coming from Southeast Asia. You'll have tuna coming from the coast, the Gulf Coast. You'll have product coming in, swordfish coming in from the deep waters down.
Does the company do its own fishing, or they have fishermen do it?
No, we don't. We don't necessarily fish for ourselves, but what we do is we have relationships with independent independent fishermen. So what we do in the Gloucester area, we have fishermen that will fish out of the Massachusetts area, and we'll secure pretty much everything off their boat. And it's kind of a fail-safe. So if we happen to buy product from a local fisherman, we'll guarantee that we'll almost buy their entire shipment. So if they go out and they're fishing for cod, or if they're fishing for haddock and they bring on some scup, or if they bring on some flounder, we're able to take that off their hands as well and utilize it.
Right, I was going to ask you, that was my next question. Legal Seafood, being a fish company, can you name me some of the fish right down the line, what kind of meals they serve?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have, one of the most pristine products that we serve is people love cod. Cod, haddock, flounder,
I love flounder.
sole. We have scallops, shrimp. We also, right now, it's the season for striped bass. So you see a lot of people just in Revere, actually, they'll go out, and even some commercial fishermen out of the area will go out and get striped bass literally right off the waters of Revere and up and down the East Coast. And it's, this is the best time of year to get some striped bass.
Right. I'd like to speak a little about your education, if I may. You grew up in Revere?
I grew up at the town over in Everett, and I've lived in Revere now 12 years.
12 years. You went to high school in Everett?
Yep, and then I went to a culinary school. I went to college and got a degree. And then
What was the name of the culinary school?
I went to Newberry College, received a degree in applied sciences, and then I met my wife shortly after, and we found a home in Revere, and we moved right up on Kilburn Street.
Right, you couldn't have picked a better city. I mean, nothing against the others, but you picked the best from the rest.
Yep. Well, I tell you, being here 12 years, I've embedded myself, and I couldn't be more proud of living in this city, and that's really what it comes down to. Is I love where I live, and all I want to do every day is, when I leave my house and go to work every day, and I come home, I just want to enjoy where I live, and that pride that you're instilled with is something that I want to just help magnify throughout the community. So I feel like if I'm here, like I said, I have a 9-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. We're going to see them through their early education and get them through high school, and we're both of us, we're here for the long haul. So that's something that if we're going to be here, we want to make the best of it. And I think that, you know, being in the proximity to Boston, it's such a great place to live. I can see this Boston skyline from my back door. So some nights I'll just sit out there on a lounge chair and look at the Boston skyline. And you know, you can't get that living way up in the north suburbs or down on the South Shore. You know, it's beautiful, and it can be, for some people, it can be breathtaking.
It is. I'd like to ask you, since you've been with Legal Seafood 14 years, this is going to be a little punt, though, so I mean, take it as sensitive. The name Legal, you know, I was always thinking, well, they must have a company, Legal Seafood, and somewhere along the line they must have another company called Illegal Seafood. But now, how did that company get that name?
Well, I'll give you. I can only imagine that there's plenty of places that you know. When it comes to this, the purity of seafood, you know, I think that we like that name, and it's stuck for over the years.
How did it first get started?
Well, you know, the company is the seafood restaurant is now over 60 years old. But before, so the Berkowitz family started way back in the early 1900s, and they actually had a shop or a market that sold goods, and they accepted legal green stamps.
So the ones that we had during the Second World War?
Correct,
yeah.
And so they had those stamps, and they said they were almost like a legal tender, although not everyone accepted them. The market accepted those as payment for their groceries. So over the time, next to the market, they ended up opening up a little fish fry. And they called it Legal Seafoods because of it was Legal Cash Market originally, and then they named a little seafood restaurant that was next to it Legal Seafoods. And we had, well, not we, I wasn't involved then 60 years ago, but they had great success, and people around that time in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s were really starting to understand the health benefit to eating lots of seafood. So over in Inman Square, they had that little fish fry that just completely expanded and just kept on growing.
Where did their first store start, if I may ask?
It was in Inman Square in Cambridge.
Oh.
And then they branched out and opened up in Kendall Square and Chestnut Hill, and also in the Park Square location of Boston by the Park Plaza Hotel. Yep. There were some ups and downs. You know, actually, matter of fact, the original store burnt down. And it created a lot of chaos, but then they were able to open up another location. And since then, sometime in the early 80s, the Berkowitz family and Roger, more specifically, started really grabbing the company and taking the helm and really wanted to see it grow and expand even more. So, you know, starting from 1, and now we're at around 35, and we have almost 20 locations in Massachusetts. That's
good. You know, I like to ask, you mentioned the green stamps. It brought back memories to me now, which I didn't even think of, and I'm talking about 1940, which is 70 plus years ago. I worked in a little gas station, pumping gas for my uncle who had a little gas station in Brooklyn. We had stamps, and that when you mentioned the green stamps, you had to buy, we called them ration stamps at the time, and you could only get like 3 gallons of gas a week, and you had to give in 3 stamps to get the gas, or butter, or whatever you bought because of the war effort. So I guess the green stamps had a lot to do with that too.
It was a lot to do with, and from what I gather, you know, in those times, it was a lot to do with, being, trying to give to the community, but also to try and, work with everybody, because those were the tough times, as you know, we've all read about.
Right. The only ones that didn't have to worry about the rationing of the gas were the doctors, the firemen, and the police. They were automatically
understood.
Okay. But the people who had vehicles and they needed them would have to pool their, for example, if you had green stamps or ration stamps and I had them and he had them, we would pool our trips to go together so we could save the stamp. Right.
Yep.
Instead of you wasting 3, him wasting 3, and me.
I remember hearing that from, some of my grandparents.
Yeah, you brought it back to me just now when you mentioned that.
Well, it's hopefully we won't have to hit those times ever again, but
I don't think so.
Well, you never know, but hopefully not. You can cross your fingers and knock on wood.
But it's ironic because in the 40s we were only a country of about 75 or 80 million. We're 350 million now.
Correct, and growing. Yeah.
Yep, and growing. You also have a very good history, and that's why you're a community veteran with the Pop Warner baseball and the youth baseball.
Sure, yeah. I actually I help with both organizations, Revere Youth Football, or Revere Pop Warner Football and cheerleading. We have close to 300 members, 300 children participate in that program between cheerleading and football. It's ages 5 to 14. It's a fantastic organization.
Boys and girls?
Boys and girls. The girls are allowed to play football as well, and on the flip side, boys are allowed to cheerlead. If you've seen a lot of colleges, they have a lot of male cheerleaders because some of the strength, they're able to really throw those girls up there. And so we have a great program, award-winning. The cheerleading program has brought home multiple national championships over the last 3 to 4 years. Multiple. My daughter included was able to participate in Disney last year, and she brought home, her team brought home the national championship for her level. It was unbelievable. It was a great experience to be able to go down there with all the families and see all the kids having such a great time. And then on the football side, same age limits, about 5 to 14, right about till you get into the high school level. And we have a great program, and we can't wait. August 1st is our last. We have an orientation, but it's also our next registration. Pretty much the last registration because you start up with practices. But we're kicking off in September, and we're gonna really break in that new stadium that they have down on Park Ave. It's gonna be beautiful.
The Harry Delarusso Stadium.
Correct. Yeah,
is it almost all finished?
It's almost done. I think they're going to be having some sort of a ribbon cutting ceremony probably sometime soon. And like I said, our first home game will be in the second week in September, right roundabouts then. And last year was a tough year because we weren't able to have any home games. But you look at
you also had the tornado too.
Well, yeah, I don't think that impacted us. Thankfully. No, thankfully. I know that I was also obviously close to a number of people off the Broadway stretch and off the Parkway. They got their roofs torn off or had some serious damage, but it didn't impact me personally. My house personally, living about 7 streets off of Broadway, but it didn't. The stadium being rebuilt, we took the year off of not having any home games, and we went on the road the entire season, which was fun. But like I said, the kids cannot wait. They cannot wait to get on that field, and we're really thankful to have that new stadium.
That's fantastic. Now, if parents want to get their kids involved in the Paul Warner Reunion, how would they contact you?
Sure. I mean, my contacts, both the leagues have, great websites. So we have rybs.org, and that's for Revere Youth Baseball and Softball. And that program has over 600 athletes in the program, girls and boys playing from t-ball all the way up to senior league softball and baseball, and it's a tremendous program. We just wrapped up the majority of our main seasons, and then there are some of those teams end up playing into some late summer and fall baseball and softball. But that was another tremendous season, and we're finishing up that field is going to be actually renovated and redone over the off season.
Right, Patrick, you mentioned the youth from, what was it, 6 to 14?
5 to 14, correct.
5 to 14. And I was just thinking, at 14, usually we graduated from elementary school. When I was going to school, we didn't have what they have today. We have public schools, ages 5 to 13 or 5 to 14, depending if you got in a little later because of your age. So it was mostly the kids from the public schools. But the high school kids, if they're still, it don't make any difference whether you're in public school or high school, as long as you're 14 and under.
Yep. For most of these programs, as long as you're a Revere resident, you have to live within the borders. And when you get into high school, a lot of kids typically will venture off and play for the high school programs. You're going to get a higher level of competition.
From 14 on up to 18, let's say. Or
yeah, 14. So from that freshman year up to their senior year, a lot of kids will gravitate towards playing for the high school, which you would expect.
Right.
Our goals are to, obviously to give them good discipline in the different sports and teach them from a young age so that what we want them to do is really enjoy the sport. But from a community standpoint, you want to have these youth organizations because they're healthy and they instill that pride in kids from when they're young. And if you recall, maybe when you were younger, you may have worn a shirt from your city, and you were proud of, where you grew up, and you were proud of, playing for the city that you lived in. So that pride and the health aspect really sticks with kids from a young age and brings them up to their adulthood.
I think when I was young, we didn't have clothes. The cavemen,
no clothes.
We had
yeah.
I mean,
you just wore fur, correct?
Right.
Yes, some form of raccoon.
First of all, I got to ask you this question. You are running for Ward 4 councilor, but why are you running for Ward 4 councilor?
You know, I've lived in, like I said, I lived in my ward for 12 years, and I have such pride for my neighborhood. The neighbors that
Oh, you live in Ward 4?
Correct,
Okay.
of course, yes. And so my neighbors they're great. And you know, being a participant in many different organizations throughout the city, I really think that I have something that is you know, maybe missing and that I can offer the city. And I think that from my standpoint, I'm able to bring a lot to the table. Like I said, at 36 years old, I have 2 children that are, you know, that are involved in our school system, and both my wife and I are very involved in what's going on in the city. And I feel like we're able to, if we make a decision today, and if I happened to be on the city council, and I made a decision today, I have to live with it. I'm not going to be leaving anytime soon. So I feel like you have that community investment when you make a decision, or when you have to vote on something, when you have to decide what's going to go on in your neighborhood. You have to live with it, and I'm going to be living with that for a very long time. You know, I'm not going anywhere. Very, like I said, very settled in the city. But I also think, from a business standpoint, working in the private industry, you know, my job, I don't have a job that I can just come and go as I please. I have to do a good job. I've worked for Legal Seafoods for 14 years. If they decide tomorrow, or if my bosses decide tomorrow that I'm not doing a very good job, they're going to let me go. And that's understandable, and there's nothing wrong with that. So to the voters and the residents of the city, if I'm elected and I'm not doing my job, I wouldn't expect to come back. I wouldn't expect to be invited back. So what I'm asking for is a chance to be able to offer my skill set. The business side of things there's a lot of redevelopment that's going to be going on in the Broadway area. A lot of that impacts Ward 4, and I feel like, you know, I have a lot of connections with many different restaurant groups and many different medium to small organizations that can come in and help continue with that revitalization of Broadway. And then also, from the standpoint of where I am, is there's a lot of issues going on in the city that have to do with, you know, public health, that have to do with the opiate issues. I'm living that demographic is probably right around 20 to 40, and I'm right in the middle of that demographic that's being mostly impacted. I've seen it. The kids I went to high school with, a lot of those kids were affected. So, you know, living it and seeing it and being able to really understand it, I feel like I can help address it. And, you know, the same thing is the involvement in the youth organizations is really what I want to focus the most energies in, is because if you start with the youth, if you start young and you plant those seeds and you water and you nourish those seeds, they're going to grow up and be really fruitful plants and trees. If you neglect them, and if you just dismiss that segment, you know, you might be getting something that you don't like.
Right. Could you explain, because we have a lot of new people that moved into the city of Revere, a lot of immigrants, some from South America, Africa, Asia. Tell them roughly where Ward 4, the limits of Ward 4, approximately.
So the Ward 4 pretty much runs from the east side of Revere Beach Parkway all the way up Broadway. So the line is drawn straight up Broadway on the east side. And it runs I'm sorry, pardon me, the west side all the way up to about Lincoln Ave, and then it cuts back into Washington Ave. Parts of Lincoln Ave are split.
Washington Ave is way down at the end of Park Avenue.
Washington Ave goes all the way down to Park Avenue. So you have the west side of Broadway, right, in from the Parkway all the way to Washington Ave and all the way down to about Lincoln Ave.
That's quite a nice neighborhood too.
You know, Ward 4 is the Ward 4 is the third largest voting ward in our city. It's a wonderful neighborhood to live in, and that's another part. I want to be able to represent the ward as it should be, and make sure that the citizens of the ward get what they deserve when it comes to, you know, taking care of the streets, taking care of the sidewalks, making sure that the potholes are addressed, making sure that during the winter, and you know what, the city's done a tremendous job. I mean, especially dealing with this winter, it was you know, record-breaking snowfall, and the city did a terrific job, and I really appreciate that. But you know, making sure that those types of upkeep and maintenance throughout the city, you know, Ward 4 is well represented, and I will be a strong voice for our ward. I'll be a very strong voice.
Very good. Before we continue, we give a flag to every military veteran that comes on here, but we do make exceptions to people who are not in the military. You have to be a veteran of the community, doing your work for Bob Warner and the youth program, and amongst other things, coming down to our senior center to take care of the old folks like us.
It's a great place to go.
So we'd like to present you this from the city of Revere, from the Revere Veteran Service under Director Nick Brewer. I'm sure you've met him.
Yes, I have. Nick's a
and
great
of
guy.
course from the people of Revere. That's where this comes from.
Well,
so
thank you.
Thank the people of Revere.
I really appreciate this. This was very thoughtful, and thank you very much.
This represents our country, by the way.
Absolutely. I have Old Gloria hanging from the front of my house right now.
I'm glad you do. I just heard this morning as I was coming in to do the show with you that South Carolina voted to take the Confederate flag off the building, the public building.
Correct.
Which they should have never have put it on in the first place, but put it into the museum, which is good. The only flag that should hang on a public building is the one I just gave you, Old Glory.
Correct.
There shouldn't be a flag above it or below it, really.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I was able to catch a little bit of that this morning.
Did you get that this morning? It
Yeah,
was quite a big vote, too,
Yeah.
to take it down. And they put it into the Confederate Museum, which is good. You know, I don't care too much for the Confederate flag myself because I love the Old Glory. That's my numero uno, if I could use that
Of course,
word.
this is the only flag that. Well, you know, occasionally I'll have a Patriots or a Red Sox flag hanging from my house, but you know, the most constant is the American flag.
See, I live in Revere, and I can't let everybody know that I'm a Yankee fan, or I may not make it.
Don't hang that flag around here.
So don't mention that to anybody. Okay.
If we might have to take that flag down.
Okay. You know, we got about 7 minutes left, and what else would you like to talk about that we haven't discussed? Because I got 2 questions I want to ask you, but go ahead.
Well, you know, I think I've made my point, and you know, and like I said, I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I just want to make sure that everyone in Revere understands that, you know, especially in Ward 4, but everyone, I'm here to win, lose, or draw. I'm here to make the best impact I can for the city. And as far as you know, other questions I have, Morris, I noticed, you know, talking about the American flag, you have an unbelievable shirt, and it says American Pride and Honor.
This has a lot of good history. I got to tell you about this shirt, and I got to give a gentleman credit who came out here for the first time. His name is Paul Cordello. Believe it or not, he does a lot of work for the Wounded War.
Yeah.
Well, he does the iPads for them to make sure that every wounded soldier gets an iPad, or every wounded veteran gets an iPad. And he came on our show yesterday looking to get help on that there, and he's going to be working with a gentleman, maybe you know, maybe you don't, by Buddy Mangini,
Yep.
who's going to be doing the Columbus Day Parade. And they're going to be working on that there. So he gave me this shirt.
That's a terrific shirt.
I'm proud to wear it because to me it represents the United States of America. And we represent, you represent it, I represent it, and it's good that we do these things in there.
You're always doing a really good job raising awareness for the city, Morris, and I commend you for that.
And I also have a twin brother. He does the same thing.
Is that Norris? Norris Morris?
So you met him already.
I've heard about him. I haven't necessarily met him, but I've heard
you've heard about him.
Yes.
You know, people confuse us because we look so much alike, so they can't tell who's who sometimes.
I bet. I bet.
And by the way, you will be in our Columbus Day Parade, I hope.
Correct. Yes. You know, whether I march, you know, alone or if I march with one of the youth organizations that I help serve on, but you know, I'll definitely be part of the Columbus Day Parade. That's every other year. I'm so glad that they brought that back. I think that the citizens really enjoy seeing that, and the kids love watching it. It's just great to have. So.
It represents a part of American history, especially the first part. You know, even though Columbus was an illegal immigrant here, it's a pleasure that he came to this country because otherwise we wouldn't be here. And I learned another history lesson that before he came to America, he discovered Puerto Rico first.
I believe, yeah. Well, they said he landed more towards Central America in his first trip,
Yep.
or when he had first arrived. So, you know, the history isn't. I don't have it all, but you know,
I didn't even know that till yesterday. There's a little girl here by the name of Crystal from the Revere High School, and we were talking about the history of Columbus Day coming up in a few months, and she says he landed in Puerto Rico first, and I told her I never knew that because I thought I knew my history, but I guess I don't.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously over time. You know, history can kind of, you know, you smooth out the edges a little bit, and then before you know it, you end up having just part of it. But you know, that's a great thing to really pay attention to as our history. As they always say, history always repeats itself.
Right.
And
the only problem is when history does repeat itself, Patrick, it is more expensive.
It usually is. You're correct. And you know,
it is more expensive because, you know, things progress up, like the First World War, the Second World War, where history didn't repeat itself so good. First World War is mostly trench warfare. The Second World War, we were getting bombed and bombing.
Yeah, well, it's like
I hope we never have another war, but if we ever do, nuclear weapons.
Oh God, I don't like to think too much about that, but you know, hopefully we won't have to deal with those as often.
I hope the leaders of the other country think a little before they start anything, because
I would hope so too.
Because their country will be destroyed just as well as the one they're going up against.
Yeah, war's never a good thing.
No. By the way, how does your family feel about you running for the council? I forgot to ask you that question.
Sure. You know, well, going into history, I'll start with, well, one is my Mrs. Jennifer. She couldn't be any more supportive. She's always by my side. I mean, the amount of comments that I get from people that I've talked to, you know, walking the neighborhood, where she's already gotten to them. She's gotten ahead of me and gotten to them. And they said, you know, a lot of them tell me, they say, I'd rather talk to your wife than talk to you. So I said that, hey, if it gets us the vote, you know, we're a team in this. But
she might be running too.
No. But she's definitely, I have her full support, and that's something that is important, because campaigning can be very straining on a family, and being in the public view all the time. But you know, my children, they're excited. My daughter, she's a typical 12-year-old girl. She's a little less excited sometimes. But my son is, you talk about history, he's a huge history buff. Going to the JFK Library, which he's been to a number of times, and he reads, that's pretty much his books of choice happen to be based on presidents or history. When he went to this JFK Library for the first time, you would have thought it was a child going to Disney World. So he's super excited. He does want to grow up and become president someday. It's pretty lofty. I told him maybe he can start somewhere lower, but that's something that he wants to do. So he is totally behind me.
Tell him I wish him the best of luck too, by the way. I guess we got a minute left or so I'm going to take that extra minute and say, sure. Patrick, I want to thank you for coming on Revere TV.
Well,
God bless you, and I wish you good luck in whatever you do.
Well, thank you, and I once again, Morris, I couldn't be more happy that you invited me to the show, and I really appreciate it.
It's an honor for the people of Revere to see you in the city of Revere, Revere TV. Huh? I would like to thank the people of Revere, and God bless them all. God bless our troops overseas, but most of all, God bless our great country, the United States of America. And Patrick, thank you again for coming. Until the next time, folks, I hope you tune us in and see another great show.
Well, thank you, Morris, and thank you, Revere.
Thank you.